The morning Claire Decker walked into a pawn shop on Route 9 with her father's medals in a grocery bag. She told herself it was just stuff. Just metal. Just ribbon. She told herself that the whole drive over, gripping the steering wheel with both hands, eyes fixed on the road so she wouldn't have to think about what was sitting in the passenger seat. She had been telling herself a lot of things lately. She told herself she'd find another position within the month. She told herself the hospital's decision was political, not personal. She told herself that 31 years old was young, that she had time, that things like this happened to people, and people survived them. She said these things quietly, in the dark. In the apartment she wasn't sure she could afford past the end of February. The bag sat on the seat beside her. Inside it, 4 medals, folded into a dish towel she'd found in the back of a kitchen drawer. She hadn't been able to look at them directly when she packed them. She just reached into the shoebox on the closet shelf, felt the familiar weight, and wrapped them up without letting herself think. Her father had been dead for 6 years. His name had been Robert Decker, Staff Sergeant, United States Army, 2 tours in Iraq before the accident on I-94 that had nothing to do with any of it. He had been a man who pressed his shirts before church and kept his boots by the back door, and never, not once, talked about what he'd done over there. She only knew about the medals because her mother had told her, quietly, at the kitchen table when Claire was 22, pulling them out of the same shoebox like they were something fragile. He earned these, her mother had said. Everyone. Claire had driven past Keller's pawn and trade 4 times before she pulled in. The parking lot was half empty on a Tuesday morning. A man was loading a guitar case into his truck. A woman stood near the door talking on her phone. Claire sat in the car for a minute, then 2, then got out before she could stop herself. Inside smelled like carpet cleaner, and something older underneath, like basements. Glass cases ran the length of the room. Guitars, power tools, watches, wedding rings, rows of them, which was somehow the worst thing to see first. The man behind the counter was maybe 60, gray-haired, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He looked up when she came in. "Help you?" "I have some." She stopped. "Set the bag on the counter. Military medals. I want to know what they're worth." He pulled the glasses down and reached for the bag without ceremony, the way a man does when he's handled 1,000 things that meant everything to someone. He unwrapped a dish towel carefully, which she noticed and was grateful for, and laid the medals out one by one. She looked away. There was a corkboard on the wall with index cards pinned to it. Lawnmower for sale. Piano lessons. Someone looking for a lost cat named Gerald. "These are real," the man said. "Yes." "Army. Army. My father's." He didn't say anything else for a moment. She heard the door open behind her. What happened next? She would try to describe it later and never quite get it right. She heard the sound of nails on the linoleum. Then something pressed against her leg, warm and heavy, and she looked down. A German shepherd stood beside her. Large, calm, wearing a vest she would later learn was a service dog vest, tan and black. He was not looking at her. He was looking at the counter. At the medals. He pressed forward, put his front paws on the edge of the counter, and lowered his head until his chin was resting maybe 2 inches from her father's bronze star. His ears were forward. His tail was not wagging. He was absolutely, completely still. "Diesel." The voice came from the door. "Diesel, come." The dog did not move. Claire turned. A man had come in behind her. Late 30s, she thought, wearing a gray Henleyan jeans, dark circles under his eyes that looked permanent. He was holding a leash that had gone taut. He looked at the dog, then at the counter, and something shifted in his expression that she couldn't read. "I'm sorry," he said. He stepped forward and took the leash in both hands. "Diesel, come on, buddy." The dog finally stepped back from the counter, but he didn't go to the man's side. He sat down directly beside Claire's left foot and pressed his flank against her leg, and he stayed there. The man looked at her, then at the medals on the counter. He was quiet for a moment. "Those yours?" "My father's." Another pause. "What branch?" "Army. 2 tours." He nodded slowly. He wasn't looking at her the way strangers usually did when she said that, the quick sympathetic smile, the pivot to something else. He was looking at the medals like he was reading something. "That's a Purple Heart," he said, "and a bronze star with a V device." He said the last part carefully. "The V is for valor." "I know," she said. And then, because she didn't know what else to say, "I know what they are." She had not known about the V device until that moment. Her mother had never mentioned it. "My name is Marcus Webb," the man said. He didn't offer his hand. He was still looking at the counter. "I was Navy, EOD, 3 tours." The man behind the counter had stepped back quietly, the way people do when they understand they're not the center of what's happening. "I'm Claire," she said. "What are you doing here, Claire?" It should have been rude. It wasn't. His voice was even, not demanding, just asking directly, the way people ask when they actually want to know. She looked at the medals. She had meant to say something practical, something about needing the money and it just being objects, and her father would have understood. She had the whole thing prepared. Instead, she said, "I don't really know." She hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. The number in her bank account was something she had stopped checking directly and now only approached sideways, through the corner of her eye, the way you look at something that hurts. She had $4,200 left. She owed $1,800 left. She owed $1,800 on the first of the month. After that, there was her car insurance, her phone, the electric bill she'd been putting off. The math was not complicated. It just had no good answer. She had lost her job at Mercy Regional 11 weeks ago. She had not lost it carelessly. She had not made a mistake, not had a lapse, not gotten into a conflict she could have avoided. She had filed a report. That was the whole of it. She had documented what she saw. Medication logging discrepancies on a floor where the numbers hadn't added up for months, and filed it through the proper channels, the way every training module and ethics course had told her she was supposed to. She had done everything right. 2 weeks later, she was called into a meeting with her supervisor and someone from HR, and they told her that her contract was not being renewed due to restructuring. She had sat in that room and nodded and signed the paperwork they put in front of her because she was too shocked to do anything else. She had walked to her car in the parking structure and sat in it for 45 minutes before she could drive. Nobody from the hospital called after that. Not her supervisor, who had mentored her through her first year. Not her colleagues, most of them, except for one text from a woman named Priya that said, "I'm so sorry, I don't know what happened," and then nothing after that either. She had filed for unemployment. She had applied to 6 other hospitals in the region. She had 3 callbacks, 2 interviews, and then polite emails informing her the position had been filled. She didn't know if Mercy Regional had said something or if it was coincidence or if the job market was just like this now. She had no way to know. She had asked a lawyer friend who told her she'd need documentation and probably a year of her life to fight it, and even then, the shoebox came down from the closet at the end of January. "My dad would have hated this," she said to Marcus Webb and not to him at the same time. He would have said, I can hear exactly what he would have said. She stopped. Diesel had not moved from her side. "He would have told me to put them back." "But he's not here," Marcus said. "No." "What happened?" She told him. Not the way she'd told people before. Careful, abbreviated, making sure to include the words restructuring and administrative decisions, which sounded less personal. She told him the actual version. The report she filed. The meeting. The parking garage. The lawyer. The 6 applications. The 2 interviews. The polite emails. She told him about the number in her bank account and the way she'd started shopping for groceries by weight, buying things by the single portion, calculating everything down to the cent. She had not told anyone the real version before. She wasn't sure why she was telling it to a stranger in a pawn shop. Maybe because he'd asked like he meant it. Maybe because Diesel was still pressed against her leg and it felt, in a way she couldn't explain, like permission. Marcus listened without interrupting. He was leaning against the counter, arms crossed loosely, and he was watching her face the way people who have been trained to pay attention watch things. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You filed a report on medication discrepancies," he said. "Yes." "And they let you go." They called it restructuring. Right. He said the word flatly, not dismissively, just clearly. He pushed off the counter and walked a few steps like he was thinking, and then came back. How long were you there? 4 years. You have the documentation? The report you filed? I kept copies. She had kept everything. She didn't know why at the time, some instinct she hadn't examined. Now she was glad. At home. Good. He looked at the medals again. At Diesel, who had still not moved. Then he looked at her. Don't sell those. I need. I know what you need. Don't sell those. She was not a person who took instructions easily. She had spent 4 years in hospital corridors where somebody always thought they knew better than her about her own work, and she had learned to hold her ground. But something about the way he said it, not telling her exactly, more like someone reporting a fact they needed her to have, made her stop. Those medals are not just metal, he said. That V device means your father went toward something when every reasonable person would have gone the other way. Those are not. They're not something you come back from selling. He paused. I know this because I know people who have. Diesel shifted, bumped his head gently against her hand. She picked up the dish towel. She wrapped the medals back up, one by one, carefully, the way the man behind the counter had unwrapped them, and she put them in the grocery bag. I have a friend, Marcus said. Her name is Shelley Park. She works at the State Veterans Assistance Office on Dunlap Street. She deals specifically with cases where family members of veterans are in financial hardship. He took his phone out and wrote something down on the back of a receipt he found in his pocket. Tell her I sent you. Tell her exactly what you told me. All of it, starting with the report. She took the paper. It was just a name and a phone number in handwriting that was small and very straight. Why are you doing this? She said. He glanced at Diesel. He wouldn't get off your leg. That's not a reason. For me, it kind of is. He said it seriously without apology. He's been doing this for 3 years. He's never been wrong. She drove home with the bag in the passenger seat again. This time, she kept looking at it. She called Shelley Park the next morning, a Wednesday, cold enough that the windows in her apartment had fogged at the edges. She had the folder of documents on the table in front of her. The report she'd filed, the termination paperwork, the HR correspondence, all of it. She had her laptop open to her bank account, which she'd finally made herself look at directly. Shelley Park picked up on the second ring and had a voice like someone who had heard everything and was not surprised by any of it and was going to help you anyway. She asked questions for 40 minutes. Careful questions, in an order that Claire could tell was not random, working through everything methodically. At the end, she said, I want you to come in Thursday. Can you do Thursday at 2? Yes. Bring everything. The documentation, the termination letter, anything they gave you in writing. If you have emails, print them. A pause. Marcus said you're a nurse. I was. You still are. The hospital doesn't get to take that from you. She said it matter-of-factly, the way she probably said everything. Thursday at 2, Claire sat at the kitchen table after she hung up and looked at the folder and then at the grocery bag on the counter, the dish towel visible at the top, and she thought about her father pressing his shirts on Sunday mornings, standing at the ironing board in the kitchen, working carefully around the buttons. She had watched him do it 100 times as a kid. It had seemed tedious to her then. Now it seemed like something else. Like a decision he made every single week to show up looking like himself, no matter what. She didn't know what Thursday would bring. She had learned by now not to put too much weight on, maybe, but she got the folder out, sorted everything into order, made sure every page was there. Thursday came. She put on her good coat and drove to Dunlap Street. Shelley Park's office was small and warm and had a ficus in the corner that was losing leaves, but was clearly loved, judging by the saucer of water beneath it. Shelley herself was 50-something, Korean-American, and wore reading glasses on a chain. And she went through Claire's documents the way a surgeon goes through a procedure, completely focused, completely calm, occasionally making a small sound that was not quite a word. At the end of it, she set the papers down and folded her hands on the desk. Okay, she said. Here's what I'm seeing. What she was seeing was this. The medication discrepancies Claire had reported were consistent with a diversion pattern, controlled substances being skimmed at the point of administration. This was, under federal law, a patient safety issue, which meant that Claire's report was a protected disclosure under whistleblower statutes, which meant that what Mercy Regional had done in terminating her contract 2 weeks after that report was potentially retaliatory termination. Potentially, Claire said. The documentation you have is strong. I'm not going to tell you it's a guarantee, because nothing is. But this is not a gray area. Shelley tapped the folder. And because your father served, you qualify for our emergency assistance fund. That covers up to 3 months of housing costs while you're in active job placement. It's not a loan. You don't pay it back. Claire had not expected the last part. She had been prepared for a maybe. She had been braced for more waiting. 3 months, she said. Sometimes it takes less. We also have a partnership with Lakewood General and 2 other regional hospitals for expedited interviews when there's a documented wrongful termination situation. That's not a job offer. It's a foot in the door, and you still have to earn it. But it's a real foot. Claire thought about the number in her bank account, the groceries she'd been buying by weight, the receipt in her pocket with a stranger's handwriting on the back. My father, she said. He never talked about what he did. I didn't even know about the V device until yesterday. Shelley was quiet for a moment. Most of them don't. The ones who actually earned it. She looked at Claire steadily. He would be proud of what you did. Reporting what you found. Staying in that parking garage until you could drive. Every morning since. Claire looked at the ficus in the corner. One of its leaves drifted down, slow, landing on the saucer. She did not cry in Shelley Park's office. She had been holding herself at a certain angle for 11 weeks, carefully, and she was not going to stop now. But something in her chest shifted. Something she had not known was locked. 6 weeks later, she was working at Lakewood General. It had not been easy. The interview was real, the panel thorough. And there had been a moment near the end when a senior nurse manager had asked her, directly, about leaving Mercy Regional, and she had answered directly, without abbreviation, and watched the woman write something down. She had driven home not knowing. She had checked her email 11 times in 2 days. The offer came on a Tuesday. The same day of the week she'd walked into Keller's Pawn and Trade. She had to read the subject line 3 times before she opened it. The investigation into Mercy Regional's medication practices had been referred to the state health department. Shelley Park's office had made that referral, quietly, alongside an anonymous report from someone who turned out to be Priya, her former colleague, who had apparently been waiting for someone else to go first. The investigation was ongoing. Claire was not a party to it. She had already done her part. She texted Marcus Webb the morning she started at Lakewood. She had his number from the receipt, which she'd transferred to her contacts 2 days after the pawn shop. She had been unsure whether to use it, and then had been sure. Started the new job today, she wrote. Tell Diesel I said thank you. He texted back 40 minutes later. 3 words. He already knows. She stood in the break room at Lakewood General in her scrubs, phone in hand, and looked out the window at the parking lot below. Cold still, but the kind of cold that felt like it was loosening, like the season was deciding something. The shoebox was back on the closet shelf. She had not put the medals in the dish towel this time. She had left them out, laid on top of the folded letters that had come with each one. Citations she had read 4 times now, and was still reading. Her father had gone towards something when every reasonable person would have gone the other way. She understood now, in a way she hadn't when she filed the report, that she had done the same thing. Not because she was brave. She had not felt brave. She had felt terrified, and then numb, and then so tired of being careful that she hadn't been able to stop herself. That, she thought, was probably how it worked for most people. You didn't decide to be the kind of person who held the line. You just got to a point where the alternative was something you couldn't live with, and you found out, after the fact, who you were. She finished her coffee and went back to work. I keep thinking about the moment Claire stood at that counter and couldn't say what she came to say. She had the words ready. She'd practiced them. But something in her just stopped. And I think that hesitation was the most honest thing she did that whole day. There's a version of this story where she sells those medals and walks out and nobody ever knows. She pays the rent. She survives the month. And the people who pushed her out of Mercy Regional never face a single consequence because she was too exhausted to fight and too scared to believe it would matter. That version exists. It happens to people every day. What changed things for Claire wasn't luck. It was three things, and I'd been turning them over ever since. The first was that she did the right thing to begin with. Filed the report, documented everything, kept copies when she had no reason to believe anyone would ever ask for them. That wasn't strategy. That was just who she was, the kind of person who, when she saw something wrong, couldn't make herself look away from it. That's not a small thing. That's actually the whole foundation. Without it, there's no story. There's just a woman who stayed quiet and kept her job and watched the numbers not add up for another year. The second was that when Marcus asked her what was going on, she told him the real version, not the careful one. I think about how easy it would have been to abbreviate, to say restructuring and let it sit there, to protect herself from being seen as someone who'd lost. She didn't. She said the actual thing. And that took a kind of clear-eyed courage that I think we underestimate, the willingness to let someone see the full size of your problem, not the managed version of it. The third is the one that gets me most. She went to Shelley Park's office with her folder sorted and every page in order. She didn't know what Thursday would bring. She'd been told maybe enough times to stop believing in it, but she went anyway, prepared, dressed in her good coat, ready to make the case for herself one more time. That is a particular kind of strength. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind anyone makes movies about. The quiet kind. The kind that just keeps showing up. I think about her father pressing his shirts on Sunday mornings, working carefully around the buttons, making a decision every week to show up looking like himself. She didn't know she'd inherited that from him. Maybe he didn't know he was passing it on. What I keep coming back to is this. The outcomes in Claire's story weren't random. They followed directly from the choices she made, one at a time, long before anyone was watching. The report she filed, the copies she kept, the real version she told, the folder she sorted the night before. None of those felt like much at the time. They rarely do. But that's how it actually works, not in big dramatic gestures. In small, honest decisions made when you're tired and scared and not sure anyone will ever care. You find out who you are in those moments, and then, later, if you're paying attention, you find out it mattered.